You.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast. Monday, 4 p.m., Bo Wulf, Zach Berman on site at the NFL League meetings in Orlando, Florida. Much to discuss today. Zach, how you doing?
Doing great. Excited for the show. You are correct when you said much to discuss today. And this is one of my favorite events from the year. We spoke to Howie Roseman today. Got the chance to speak to different coaches from the AFC. I got a chance to spend time with you and the other reporters. So this is going to be a good show. We've had some of our finest shows in the past from the league meetings. And I think today we'll live up to it as well.
Well, let's hope so. And we do, in fact, have plenty to get to from everything we heard from Howie Roseman to some things that have happened around the league over the past few days, maybe some whispers that we have heard in the nooks and crannies of the Ritz and the JW Marriott, the whispers that are happening in all the dark corners and caverns of this posh resort where we are not staying. We are somewhere else. We will get to that. And you know what? As much as I would like to start with some off football stuff for reasons that I will explain at the end of the show, I think I owe it to you, Zach, because you have done such a wonderful job as a teammate today that I'm going to return the favor. Let's just start with football.
Today? I would like to think every day. But yeah, no, this is why people are tuning in. Not everyone in the media corps is down here, and we're both down here. Had a chance to speak to Howie Roseman. Really, Howie's first public comments.
We can get to it all.
Okay.
All right. I want you to know that this is.
I thought you were pitching. Okay.
To you. And I take the note in the chat that the light behind me is a little bit distracting. But guess what? It makes me look like an angel, and I think that's how it should be. So
I wanted to have this beautiful Orlando Vista behind me.
Yeah, so you'll never get a view like that outside of Orlando.
But apparently the lighting wasn't good. So I'm actually, you're missing out on the trees and the clouds and somewhere in the distance here, Universal Studios and Disney World.
Okay, let's begin with Howie Roseman. We got to talk to Howie Roseman today for a few minutes with the rest of the reporters who are down here. This is the first time that we have spoken to Howie Roseman about the moves that he has made, the truth that he has told with the moves that he has made with this roster over the past month. Probably really one of like 4 times a year where we get to talk to Howie Roseman. And I would say of those 4 times between this and the combine and right before the start of the regular season after cuts and then after the regular season or after the season is over, of those 4 times, I feel like this is the best version of Howie we get in terms of him telling us the truth a little bit and having things to be reflective about. And so among those things, obviously we talked to him about all the players who they have signed, Zach. I think we should start with Saquon Barkley because that is first of all, it's the thumbnail. So you got to keep that thread continued. But I think that is the one where it was the most different move that he has made from his long history as the person in charge of the Eagles roster. What can you tell us about why Saquon Barkley was different to Howie Roseman than running backs in the past?
Well, he would disagree with the premise of that statement. And he would suggest that the Eagles have gone hard after running backs before. They were obviously they signed LaShawn McCoy in 2012. He was in the front office when they signed Brian Westbrook to an extension.
Yeah, I mean, when you've been in a front office for 25 years,
yeah,
you're going to be able to find examples of things you've done.
Yeah, he wouldn't say this publicly, but they were going to draft Christian McCaffrey in 2017. But what you can't dispute is that recent history shows the Eagles haven't really allocated resources, particularly financial resources in this position. So, yes, Saquon is different. And why is he different? Well, their perspective on it, and this is Howie's perspective, speaking on behalf of the organization, is that Saquon's a special player. Those are his words. And it's hard to find special players, particularly on the open market, right? You think, when can you get the elite, all pro level players? It's very rarely via free agency. So that was a motivating factor. The other part of this was the fact that and you refer to this in your analysis when you look at ways you can upgrade the offense. Saquon touches the ball 300 times. Like they're not being coy about this. Saquon's going to have a huge role in this offense. He's going to be a 3-down back. He's going to get the ball quite a bit, and that it's rare to find someone who can have that type of effect on the offense. And then also just all the different things that Saquon brings to the table. I did ask, and just to be consistent here, because I said when they made the move that, yeah, I know they signed LaShawn McCoy. LaShawn McCoy was going into his age 20. Yeah. Saquon's going into year 27, has a lot of workload. And Howie acknowledged that the workload curve is something that they studied, that it's there. He would kind of push back on the age thing. They're not paying Saquon at age 30, right? Saquon's kind of in that wheelhouse of when you would consider a young free agent, 25, 26. He's 27 years old. So a little on the higher end there, but you're still getting him for, in theory, prime years. But he basically thought that, like, for this period that they're having him, he could be a special player for the team. And that was really the impetus.
He called him a freak. You know, somewhere in this great country of ours, debatable, Gunther Brewer, a shiver went down his spine when he heard Howie Roseman referring to Saquon Barkley as a freak. But I thought
where Gunther Brewer is, by the way?
I believe it was at NC State.
No, he's at Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech. Yeah. You know what? I knew it was a ACC other team.
Also, I spent a lot of time in Blacksburg in a previous life, so shout out to all our listeners down in Blacksburg. I've heard some
good things about Gunther Brewer recently. He had a very nice interaction with our dear friend Coach Flynn.
Two great wide receiver minds.
Yeah, game respect game, no doubt about it.
There you go.
I thought that this was one of the interesting things he said about Saquon Barkley, and credit to the intrepid reporter who followed up and pushed him on. Those guys were at different ages than Saquon. I believe that was Zach Berman of PHLY, so shout out to him. It was a good follow-up. And he said, I think I can read it here, obviously we looked at the workload. The player trains unbelievably. He's a freak. You see that in his testing numbers, his GPS numbers, and based on the resources that go to that amount, basically the amount they paid around the league, this made a lot of sense for us. Interesting for him to call out like the GPS numbers that they're looking at. Jeff, the owners' meetings, of course, as you will note, Zach, is where Jeffrey Lurie once touted the RFID, and for the Eagles to talk about that. That doesn't mean they're going to be right, because they would have said the exact same thing about James Bradbury last year, right? But just in terms of how they do their due diligence on, is this a guy who's going to fall off the cliff? That is a data point for them. I don't know that it's still the right bet. I feel like it's the same thing we discussed in terms of what was the spot where they could upgrade the weapons on offense without upsetting the apple cart of, if you draft a wide receiver in the first round, how do A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith feel about that? Same thing about tight end. This is a guy who we can sign. Everybody's going to be happy about it. And we think that he takes the ceiling of the offense to a different level. I think there probably is connectivity to how they saw Christian McCaffrey, like, oh, that was a lot for them to give up. But what he brought to the team in this offense with Jalen Hurts, taking attention away from the running game with the guys on the outside. If Saquon Barkley can break some tackles and make some big plays downfield, that is what lifts the whole thing, and it's more than they might have been able to find somewhere else. I don't know that if it's the right value, but he talked about the pendulum having swung on maybe the league is devaluing the position a little bit too much. This is a chance where, like you mentioned the Christian McCaffrey thing, and you talk about, like, he says that the perception that they don't value the position is a little bit incorrect. It's not about do they value the position. It's when do they value the player more than the rest of the league, right? Sure. Like they were willing to draft Christian McCaffrey, but there were teams willing to draft him earlier than they were, right? There were teams who I'm sure were willing to sign Saquon Barkley, but why were the Eagles willing to pay more? I think it's because they saw the ceiling in the offense and the other options around to create that ceiling as Saquon makes more sense for us.
Yeah, I think you outlined it well there. I think the Christian McCaffrey thing, like they saw the 49ers give valuable picks, but also pay money, like big salary to Christian McCaffrey. They take what was already a really good offense, like a really efficient offense, and made it on steroids, basically, right? Christian McCaffrey made a material difference in what San Francisco was able to do.
Christian McCaffrey is on steroids?
No, I'm not. It put the offense on steroids. It brought the offense to a level that it wasn't before. So to your point, where can you make that jump as an offense? And I think they also viewed Saquon Barkley, you mentioned breaking tackles, like a body type perspective. Saquon's different than some of the other backs that they've had. Like when you talk about 3-down backs, in theory, Saquon should be able to do everything for you, right? He should be able to have explosive runs downfield, but also fight for like hard yards. He should be able to catch the ball out of the backfield, and he should be able to pass block, right? Like you're not paying Saquon Barkley this money to be part of a committee. You're paying Saquon Barkley to be the committee. Like you're paying Saquon Barkley to do everything for you. And so what they've tried to do in the past, like, they had LeGarrette Blount and Darren Sproles before Sproles got hurt, right? They had Corey Clement in there. They traded for Jay Ajayi. They had guys who can like do different types of roles. And then obviously when, they drafted Miles Sanders and he was splitting carries sometimes. And I really think with Saquon, they see someone who can do everything. Now, whether he can remains to be seen, but the aspirational view on this signing, the ambitious view of his signing, is that he's the committee all in one.
And I think actually that's a dangerous way to go about things, because like you're not gonna be pleasantly surprised. But like Saquon Barkley, there's really no way that Saquon Barkley can outperform what he's getting paid, right? Whereas if you have Darren Sproles and Corey Clement and LeGarrette Blount, and you're willing to trade for Jay Ajayi, you have guys, you have like upside, and you're also protected from injury, right? Like if you're building the whole plane out of Saquon Barkley and Saquon Barkley gets hurt or is half of what he's been in the past because Father Time has caught up with him, you're kind of screwed, right, at the position. Now we can debate about how much it matters to have that fall off at running back. Does that change your downside as an offense too much? Whereas if you have multiplicity, then there's a little bit more variance to get more for what you're paying. But that's the deal that they have made. And that's why I think they haven't gone all in for the position in the past in that way. And I think they view, for whatever reason, Saquon as, he called him a freak. Like I think they view him as a guy who they think can age well, and they don't have to be too worried about it. But there's no doubt it's the signing they have made that has the biggest downside.
Sure. I mean, the special player thing is what jumps out, because the expectation is for him to be special. So if he doesn't make this Christian McCaffrey effect, right? If he's, I don't want to say merely Miles Sanders, but if he's what Miles Sanders was in this offense, that's not good enough, right? He has to be what Christian McCaffrey is in San Francisco. But I am curious your thoughts, because he said publicly, right, about the pendulum swinging, like you mentioned. And you look elsewhere in the league, Darnell Mooney essentially is getting the same average per year and guaranteed money that Saquon Barkley is. Darnell Mooney is a second receiver, maybe a third receiver. Wide receivers are more important than running backs. Like we know that. But when you look at how teams are spending money, maybe I'm not saying it's the right move, but you say, would you take this money and pay Saquon Barkley, or would you take this money to pay Darnell Mooney? Like which one lifts the upside for this offense? The money's the same. Now, the question is what's the delta between Saquon Barkley and the next running back in this offense? The Eagles were one of the most efficient running teams in the league without Saquon Barkley. But I do think when they look at that pendulum, what they're saying is that this rate is what you're paying now for number 2, number 3 wide receivers. If you're able to get a top 5 running back at that price, then maybe from a market perspective, it makes sense. And maybe some of the views with how much you can pay a back is not necessarily in line, or aligned rather, with a growing salary cap, and kind of you look at the percentage of the cap that back's getting.
So I actually don't agree with that framing.
Okay.
Because I think what the right framing is, from their perspective, is if the rest of the market, if DeAndre Swift is going for 8,
sure, then
all of a sudden 13 for Saquon is pretty reasonable. If if we want to add a starting caliber running back, and that is the barrier to entry, and like that floor has been raised a little bit, and there's like a squeeze between the ceiling and the floor of the running back market, then the ceiling becomes better value. Like the top of the market becomes a little bit better value. I think part of the reason that you can't compare running backs to wide receivers because running back is an unpredictable position. Guys do drop off rapidly,
Sure.
and it is a cheap position to replace in the draft with like relative hit rate, like a pretty good hit rate better than most positions. So I think that's the way they view it. Like if they're going to fill that position and maybe they don't think it's a great running back draft class, then yeah, instead of paying, and we're not willing to do like, $4 million for Zach Moss or whoever it is, we're going to sign a guy, then we would rather pay for who we think is the best guy.
Yeah, I think we're in alignment with how we view this signing, in that he needs to be the best guy, right? He needs to be, as Howie said, special. He needs to age, as Howie said, like a freak, right? In order for this signing to be a good signing, because once that age curve hits you, once that workload curve hits you, you can tell at that position pretty quickly if the guy doesn't have it anymore. And there's a reason, frankly, why the Eagles have moved on from running backs, when they're approaching like age 27, age 28. Now you're paying a premium price for age 27, age 28. So
like the pass protection is nice. The pass catching is nice. Even the between the tackle stuff is nice, but he's being paid for the explosiveness. If he's not breaking long runs, then they have not gotten what they've paid for.
Absolutely. And when I'm looking back when they signed Westbrook to a 5-year, $25 million contract, that was the 2005 season, right? So at that point,
literally 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So they've paid 2 running backs in 20 years.
Yeah, they paid DeMarco, but obviously DeMarco wasn't when Howie was there. But Brian Westbrook so he was going into his, at that point, I think age 26 season or thereabouts. So a year younger, but certainly from a workload perspective, Brian Westbrook did not have the same type of workload that Saquon Barkley has coming into this.
Okay, let's move on from Saquon. Let's talk about the guys who they signed on defense and Howie Roseman's perspective on them. Do you want to start with Bryce Huff?
Sure. That's the one they spent the most money on. That's going to be the most important. And in conjunction with that, we should also mention Haason Reddick, because I think that's what most Eagles fans wanted to know.
Yes, and the expected resolution for Haason Reddick, Howie Roseman chose not to comment on any pending trade with Haason Reddick, saying that they don't talk about players' contracts and stuff like that. We know that they've got this April 1st roster bonus, which could be potentially a deadline for them to try to get something done by. But just knowing the Eagles' history, I don't think like if that's a drop dead date. Like if they don't get a good offer, they're not going to just trade him for something. I think they would be willing to pay the roster bonus if they expect that then there's going to be a better offer down the line when teams are more desperate for an edge rusher. But in terms of Bryce Huff, Zach, what do you make of what Howie Roseman said?
Yeah, I think this is kind of this is the opposite of Saquon, in that this is the profile player that they typically target, right? They see all these tools for him that really jump out to them. They see the explosiveness, they see the hand usage, right? And what then they also see, all right, from an opportunity perspective, why was he available? Well, the Jets, Howie said they had like 5-6 edge rushers who they were getting on the field, and they've spent first round picks and big money on some of these guys. And so that's also why he wasn't getting the playing time. And that is actually a line you asked Robert Saleh today about why he wasn't getting more time. And Saleh went through that he kept earning more time, right? And there were a lot of guys in front of them. You can talk more about that, but
we will have a little video up on the YouTube page later tonight. Just a quick couple snippets of answers that were Eagles related from the AFC coaches this morning.
Yeah. But basically the Eagles want to have what Howie always says, like these fastballs around the edge, right? You keep bringing them in. And that's what Bryce Huff's done when they signed him. We talked about, the advanced numbers as far as his pressure range, and how consistent that is. And that Howie said there's a perception that Huff is a liability against the run.
Just to be perfectly transparent, we did not talk about pressure rate.
We did not. Okay, we talked about.
I talked about pressure rate. I'm not talking about pressure rate.
Okay, sorry. I talked about pressure rate. Okay, you are absolved from all pressure rate discussion. Okay, you did not mention pressure rate.
I mean, I might have talked about it being a farce, but yeah.
Okay. So Howie said there's a perception that Huff is a liability against the run. Time will kind of tell on that, but the Eagles think he has the tools in his body to make a difference. So really, this is a bet on a player with tools at a position that they really like, and that's the impetus here more than anything else. Is that they value edge rushers. It's hard to find an edge rusher who has kind of the tools that Huff has. They think he can grow into a bigger role. I thought Robert Saleh said it well today when he said that there's a thought that all he does is like rush the quarterback, and he said all Mariano Rivera did was close games in the ninth inning, right? But if you can do a valuable role exceedingly well, that's a valuable skill set to have, and so that's the Bryce Huff skinny, if you will.
Let me ask you this about the edge rusher, and in conjunction with Bryce Huff. Obviously, we knew they were fielding trade offers for both Josh Sweat and Haason Reddick leading into the league year before they signed Bryce Huff. Do you think they signed Bryce Huff expecting that he was going to replace one of those two players, or just in case they were going to have to replace those two players and knowing maybe they would keep them all?
Oh, I don't think they expected to keep them all, right?
Okay.
I think
do you think that's still on the table, or do you think Reddick is definitely gone?
I think the only way that all three are back is if they pay Reddick more money, right? I think Reddick has a number that he's expecting to get, and that that he's still searching for it, presumably, because a trade hasn't been made unless the Eagles can't get the compensation that they want in return. But I don't think Haason Reddick plays this year on the number that he has. So perhaps there's a situation where the Eagles say, all right, you didn't get what you're looking for. We'll give you a bump in your last year, keep you happy, and then you hit the open market next year. But I don't see a situation where the Eagles are where Haason Reddick's playing under his current deal. That it would utterly surprise me, knowing the personality of players and just kind of the expectation of players, if Bryce Huff is making more than Haason Reddick and Josh Sweat, and that I don't think Josh Sweat stayed on to be the third edge rusher. I think part of him signing on or kind of renegotiating his deal was to have a good year and to hit the open market next year. And I don't necessarily think that the situation would have been conducive for that if he all of a sudden is third in edge rusher snaps behind Reddick and Huff.
Well, that said, I mean, Josh Sweat played a bunch fewer snaps 2 years ago and had a better year, just volume-wise, right?
But was still the number two guy.
Still the number two guy, but if you're going to promise him that you're going to get about the same amount of snaps, this is a guy who absolutely wore down last year. And we talked about part of the problem with the defense was those guys had to play too many snaps. The problem with that was maybe they didn't trust Nolan Smith enough. Nolan Smith was drafted to be part of that rotation.
Sure.
And maybe that's a coaching thing or not. But if you can convince Josh Sweat and Haason Reddick that everybody playing fewer snaps is going to make everybody better. I think they still would like to trade Haason Reddick and get good value back for him, appropriate value back for him. But I think probably more than any other position, I think there would be it might be combustible with everybody fighting for playing time, but you could probably make it work there more than anywhere else.
I suppose so, but there's also a human dynamic here, right?
I agree.
So you would need to massage. I mean, it would have to be like a very, very generous massage on Haason Reddick's contract, because it can't just be we'll throw you a little change
by Orchids of Asia.
That came off the tip of your tongue. I don't see it. Now, I could be wrong. And look, the league might tell Haason Reddick what he's worth, right? But also, I think some of this might come down to compensation as well from the Eagles' perspective, right? And Howie has shown in the past. He showed this with Zach Ertz. He's shown it elsewhere that he's not going to just make a trade to make a trade. It has to make sense for him, and he's willing to be patient. He's willing to wait for the right deal and kind of see what that presents. And he also understands, more so than I think most teams do, that, or I should say most GMs do, that deadlines at this time of year are often artificial, right? You don't play a game until September 6th. Really, that's what you're working with. And by the way, that did not materialize the way the Eagles wanted. And I'm sure Howie could have pulled the trigger earlier on a Zach Ertz trade than getting a 5th-round pick and Tay Gowan after a few months of them playing. But what Howie has shown over time is he's not going to make a trade just for the sake of making a trade. It has to be a trade that makes sense for the Eagles. So I'm really curious to see what happens here over the next month. But I think overall, like, and not to change the subject, but in conjunction with this conversation, is that the Eagles aren't finished here. Like, I really want to make that clear. Like, there's more work that I expect the Eagles to do. Obviously, the Reddick trade, there could be other high-profile moves that they make here. I don't think the Eagles are sitting on their hands on March 25th being like, all right, this is the team we're going to trot out plus draft picks, right? I still think they are looking to make moves.
I agree. And some of it is in conjunction with like what the veteran trade market has been.
Sure.
We can talk about that after we get through all of this, because the L'Jarius Sneed trade is something I want to ask you about from the Eagles' perspective. And I need to address there's a comment in here from AWOG who was saying he's surprised at how anti-advanced stats I am compared to the way he thinks that I like about football. Pressure isn't my whole beef is that pressure is not an advanced stat. It is a subjective thing being presented as objective. It's the same thing as targets, like judging corners by who's been targeted. We were watching the film with Coach Flynn the other day of these corners targets, and it's like a running back out of the backfield. They're dropping deep in zone. They just happen to sort of maybe be the closest guy, and they get pegged for that as a target. That's not real. And so pressure is not an objective thing. When I'm looking at pressure, I want to see quarterback hits. That is a thing that you cannot argue. There is too much of a blurry line about what is a pressure. It's an invented thing. That's why it doesn't matter. Give me hard data.
Nothing. You like your hard data. That's for sure.
Don't present the subjective as objective. That's my soapbox for today. Speaking of,
I concur.
Soapboxes, Zach. What's everybody's favorite thing to do tonight? Well, what are we doing tonight, Zach? Tonight is the party with the league bigwigs, the head honchos. And you know what everybody's going to be doing as they're talking and making their way from food table to food table, seeing if there are llamas to pet. You know what they're going to be doing?
You tell me, Bo.
They're going to be sucking them back with the boys, Zach, because a lot has changed over the years, and one thing that hasn't is the great taste of Miller Lite. It was the original light beer, and to this day, it is still the best one. Miller Lite has more of the taste you want and less of the stuff you don't. Miller Lite keeps it simple, undebatable quality, great taste, and only 96 calories. It's the beer that strips away everything you don't need and holds on to what matters most. It's a light beer that tastes like beer, less filling, and only 96 calories. The original light beer since 1975. And the great thing about Miller Lite at an event like this, when you need to have a little bit of longevity, you need to be, you're going to have a drink in your hand for like 4 hours. You know what you need? You need a 96 calorie, good tasting Miller Lite that you can suck back with the boys. Times change, but you can always enjoy the great taste of Miller Lite. Tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLY birds, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories per 12 ounces.
You know what? And while that sounds appealing, I might want to drink responsibly in a different way. And that is with my health in mind. Health is important, and Olipop has helped so many people on their health journey, particularly focusing on gut health. Olipop is a new kind of soda with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of fiber per can. It's the world's first functional soda with a classic soda taste and the benefits of plant-based fiber, prebiotics, and other other botanical ingredients to support gut health. 2 out of 3 Americans say they suffer from digestive issues, and 95% of Americans don't get the fiber recommended or the daily recommended amount of fiber. Olipop is tackling both of these issues with a drink that tastes just like soda. Research has linked some of those issues to poor gut health, so taking care of your microbiome may be one solution to your digestive problems. Olipop conducted a study that showed that there are Ollie Smart formulation boosts. It has a beneficial gut bacteria and generates it supports digestive and overall health. Also, Olipop has delicious nostalgic flavors like vintage cola, classic root beer, orange squeeze, classic grape, strawberry vanilla, cream soda, and cherry cola. They also have a Dr. Pepper dupe called Dr. Goodwin and a brand new Sprite dupe lemon lime flavor. Use the code PHLY20 for 20% off their next Olipop order. The discount only applies to one-time orders, not to subscription orders. Olipop is sold online. You can go to drinkolipop.com or on Amazon, and it's available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including, get this, Wawa, plus Target, Sprouts, Wegman, ShopRite, and GoPuff.
Zach, before we get going, speaking of sucking them back with the boys, I wanted to give a shout out to all the good bracket names in the PHLY bracket pool. And one of them is sucking them back with the boys, but really like a lot of credit to the team that is number 1 in the bracket through the first weekend. Very well named. Compliments to the chef, which is a very good one. Quick rundown of the rest. We've got Tom Donahoe Fist Bump, President's Day Party, Baskin Robbins 31 Flavors, Julio Comed and Went, Space Guy Naked, Excited for This Bracket, Sucking Him Back 2K24, Zach's Honey Trap, Bo's Plaid Shirt, Daniel Gallen's Mustache, and then the Ostman Family Bakery, which is the team name of Daniel Gallen's submission. So shout out to DFOB Daniel Gallen. Hen Time for Badness, Dirt of the Earth, This Zach Will Get Naked, ZB's Hentai Heroes, More Mistress Talk, Fashion Party, that's mine, Smells Like Weston Lobby, Food City All-Stars, and Puntalytics. Shout out to Raphael, our friend, who is in the chat, who is in the bracket.
Great names. And we have a former NFL head coach who chimed in on the super chat.
Why don't you read it?
We'll pull it up on the screen. Thank you so much from Arthur Bo Wulf Smith, saying, seeing the joy die in ZB's eyes as he realized that he wasn't going to talk to Fletch was a great moment in PHLY history. Us sickos are lucky to have a beat writer who loves the job more than his family. Happy late birthday. I got to say, I love my family more than anything, right? I do love my job also, and I strive to be good at it. And it wasn't that I was unhappy to see my wife and my kids on the screen. I was taken aback by it, but I had prepared for Fletcher Cox. And also thought it'd be pretty cool to have Fletcher Cox the week that, get a chance to catch up with him about retirement. So I was driving into work all pumped to talk to Fletcher Cox, but it was a very good treat. I also want to say, in terms of compliments to the chef, that my mother-in-law, she watched the show and she said now she needs to make me Rice Krispie treats because she didn't realize how much I liked Rice Krispie treats. And I was saying how Bo's were delicious. They had the brown butter, but if my mother-in-law's watching, you don't have to make me Rice Krispie treats. I really appreciate that. But
very low overhead though, very easy to make.
Very low overhead. That is true. Yes.
Now, did Emily have a review of her own after having seen the episode?
Yeah. She thought you guys were creative, and she said that I really need to think of something for your birthday. But she also knows I'm not a big birthday guy. It's actually come up before that like I don't make a big enough deal sometimes about birthdays. Yeah. And then additionally, her birthday falls always during football season, right? And unfortunately for me, sometimes you get into a big week and I'm focused on that game. I'm focused on the matchups. And so, but yeah, June 11th, I can work something fun up for June 11th.
And was Emily impressed that one of the leaders of the most powerful nations on earth listens to the show?
I don't think she got to that part.
Okay.
But yeah, she certainly likes seeing Sean Grieve.
Shout out to EMAC. I know you're watching.
Yeah, she likes seeing Sean Grieve and Pete Vernon and Coach Cross on there. So shout out to them. I appreciate that very much.
All right, let's keep moving around the topic.
By the way, she did get to the part about Macron. I don't think she quite understood the joke there. That's the thing. I think it was very esoteric.
Wait, so you just lied like 90 seconds ago?
I wasn't trying to
cover for her?
I mean, no, it wasn't like we were like actively watching the Macron part, right? It was it was funny if you were in on the joke, I think. Wow.
All of a sudden we have to call into question your integrity as a truth teller if you're going to
No. I'm trying to protect I'm trying to stand up for my wife here.
Okay. Let's keep moving the ball around from the things that Howie Roseman talked about today. Let's move on to CJ Gardner-Johnson. If we're just going to go down the list of how much money they spent, CJ Gardner-Johnson. What did Howie say? I thought this was maybe like the pull quote of everything he said today was the thing that he said about the nastiness on defense. And let me pull it up.
So
what did he say exactly? Go ahead.
Yeah, he did not use the term that I use, competitive zeal. If he pulled out a competitive zeal, I would certainly know that he watches the show. Right?
Whoa, hold on. Well, now I have to address this because he said something today that did make it clear that he watches the show. It has never been so clear because this was towards the end, and you, as you know, the man who needs to have everything on the record, and he did a very good job of this. You wanted to just sort of quickly run through everybody they signed, get Howie Roseman's stump speech on them, the bottom line. And you asked him about you asked him about Paris Campbell, actually. And he goes, well, Zach. And he winks. And a twinkle goes into his eye. And a wry smile creeps up his cheeks. And he goes, he did have a 60-catch season 2 years ago.
It didn't go totally like that. But, yeah, I mean, the 60-catch season did.
And then he winked again.
And that is accurate that he has 60-catch season. Anyways, regarding CJ Gardner-Johnson, he said, when he was asked about that mentality, personality, he said that would be accurate to say. We were looking to gain our swagger and mentality back. Obviously, what happened at the end of the year didn't feel good, wasn't acceptable for any of us. You get players who can bring that and have that motivation and that mentality.
And he was also talking about guys who are young. The idea of bringing in, which to be fair, this was a thing he said at the combine and followed through with, was focusing on bringing in younger guys on defense. But the swagger, the mentality, I remain of the thought that it's kind of silly to frame it as you're making right a decision from last offseason. But if you think that is a dynamic that is needed in the defense moving forward, I can get on board.
Yeah, I stand by what I said when they signed him, that I thought they missed that last year. I'm not saying I don't think you sign someone because of that. They have to be talented, right? Like that's the barrier for entry, is being really talented. But I think if we go back and we watch the shows, I said that you can't just have guys out there who are like choir boys. Like everyone's different, right? But I think a certain edge can benefit a defense. Actually, I heard Jason Kelce say a similar thing on his show this week about what CJ brings, and I think there's value to that. Now, I'll put it this way: I wouldn't want 11 CJ Gardner-Johnsons on my defense in terms of personality. Like I want a high skill level. No, yeah, but I mean just like there's it can become too combustible if everyone's like that. But you often need the straw that stirs the drink. And he can be the straw that stirs the drink. And I think the Eagles missed that last year, and I think they'll welcome him back this year.
Well, and Howie Roseman sort of framed Devin White as part of that group, as bringing a little bit of edge. And I asked him about Devin White and the perception that this is a guy who was a freelancer last year, especially, and at times throughout his career. And maybe that didn't seem like it was going to be a fit for Vic Fangio. Why is that not the case? And he said, basically, I think Devin White would tell you that he didn't have his best year last year, just like we didn't have our best year last year. And he saw that there were guys in the market who got paid more money who didn't have a great year 2 years ago. and had a good year this year. And so both sides view this as a chance to increase his value and like an opportunity for him to do that. But in terms of the Vic fit, he said what Vic looks for. He looks for speed. He looks for explosiveness, which Devin certainly has. This is a direct quote. He's looking for people who are versatile, who can play in space, who can play in coverage, who can get after the quarterback, and obviously fill in the run game as well. In terms of Vic and the fit, I think it's a good fit and obviously a good opportunity for us. And so I think he's selling it as like this is a make good opportunity for Devin White to be like a guy in the middle of a defense that has upside and rebuild his value on the open market.
Yeah, I'm with you there as far as Devin White. I think what Howie said was spot on. Like they're acknowledging that he did not have the year that he wanted last year. He's being paid accordingly, right? And that this is a chance for Devin White to reset his value. And we said like if this goes well for Devin White, he's being paid big money next year. He's still at that age profile. He's had good years behind him. And that's kind of what the Eagles are gambling on. Is he has the athletic skill set that made him the number 5 pick in the draft. He has the personality attributes that allowed him to be a team captain. And there are factors sometimes, and we've seen it, like guys play bad in contract years. Sometimes guys play great in contract years. Sometimes the contract year affects them. And this isn't to say that Devin White's going to come in and he's going to have the year that it's Kevin Dodson was that the guard who it's kind of like a cast off and is making $16 million the next year. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's kind of the gamble that the Eagles are taking with Devin White.
I thought that one of the things he said about some of the other players he signed that really made my eyebrows raise that, I wanted to bookmark was on Zach Bond.
Yeah.
When he mentioned that, Vic Fangio went to Miami last year and had a player with a very similar skill set have a breakout year. And he's referring to Andrew Van Ginkel, who we've talked about. And it is absolutely true that Bond was not Oren Burks, right? It was not like they waited out the market. He was the guy who they targeted to go get. They signed him very early in free agency. And I think they view him as, it sounds like, according to what Howie Roseman said, sort of a poor man's or a next man's Andrew Van Ginkel in the way they're going to use him, which, goes back to the discussion about do they have too many edge rushers? Like, are there enough snaps to go around? If they're going to use him in this way, you probably don't have enough room for all those guys. But that is, they view him as a guy who has real upside in the defense.
Yeah, and the part of his quote that jumped out to me is he was a targeted guy for us, right? And I don't think we made light of it, but it was like interesting. The first day of free agency, the 3 guys they signed were Saquon Barkley, Bryce Huff, and Zach Bond, right? And that's not by coincidence. This is someone who, when the market opened, they wanted him. When they did their scouting, they thought this was a profile player that they really wanted to bring in here.
And that, to me, is also a part of the conversation we've had about Vic Fangio's influence in the guys they signed this offseason. I mean, that to me is like Vic was like, I want a guy like this. And they probably brought a few guys to him who might have that skill set. And this is the one that he wanted.
Yeah. And both, I mean, it's probably not a coincidence. Both are Wisconsin guys who kind of fit that role in the Wisconsin defense. And that's how, if you're looking for the Zach Bond comp for the Eagles, it's going to be the way Andrew Van Ginkel was used last year in Miami. Not maybe in terms of workload, and Bond's going to have a role in special teams for the Eagles, but that's the way they're going to use him.
I want to get to corner in a sec, Zach, but before that, of everybody else who we talked about, everybody else who he signed, is there anybody else worth mentioning? I imagine you're going to have a piece on allphly.com that sort of goes through everybody. Well,
not who they signed, but who they traded for, Kenny Pickett. We should just kind of get into Pickett real quickly.
Sure.
And, first off, it was framed to Howie in a question about, like, did he run this by Jalen? And he quickly pushed back that Jalen's a franchise quarterback. Like, there's nothing they could do at quarterback that affects Jalen Hurts' status on the team. But he basically said that Pickett's a guy that they did a lot of work on going into the draft. You never know what's going to happen down the line. That, the Eagles are not shy about saying that they've benefited from the backup quarterback or the second quarterback, as Jeffrey Lurie terms it, like more than any team in the league. When they're concerned they won a Super Bowl with one, right? And then you look at all the guys that they've had who've played playoff games who have been backups, and so they're investing in that position. I think they view Pickett as more athletic than the perception might indicate, but they also don't think that the backup quarterback needs to play the same style as the starting quarterback. Like from their vantage point, it's hard enough to find like a starting quarterback in this league or a good quarterback in this league. You're really limiting yourself if you say you need to find one who has the same skill set as your starting quarterback, and that because of the skill players that they have on offense, right? If Jalen Hurts got hurt, they can function well as an offense in theory, not leaning into some of the run concepts that they might have with Jalen Hurts. Also, it should be noted that like the Eagles, I think publicly and privately are still very bullish on Tanner McKee. Now, you could also say your actions speak louder,
Yes.
right? Like that.
They're only bullish.
What's that?
They're only bullish to a point. I mean, if they loved him, they would not have made this trade.
No, yeah, you're correct about that. They don't think he's ready to be the backup quarterback, but I also don't think Tanner McKee's in jeopardy of losing his roster spot. Like, when Will Grier was signed.
They signed Will Grier over the weekend, formerly of West Virginia, has kicked around the league for the past 5 years. You don't view him as a threat to Tanner McKee.
No, I think Will Grier's just here to kind of be, I don't want to say a translator, but he's there to be translator
he's here to place the bet on Jalen Hurts' gambling addiction.
No, he's here to kind of help with the Kellen Moore offense. He has experience with Moore, has experience with Nussmeier. I don't think the Eagles add a quarterback in the draft or in the undrafted market who like meaningfully pushes Tanner McKee. I think Tanner McKee's the number 3 developmental quarterback this year.
Sorry, you got paused there for a minute on my feed. The McKee thing, like I believe that they still like him, but they don't love him.
Sure.
Otherwise, they don't think he's ready
to be the backup. Yeah, to be the backup.
That's what he was drafted for, right? They drafted him to have the upside of being a cheap backup, a cost-controlled backup. He had a really good preseason. Who knows what happened over the course of the regular season? And now they're committing 2 years to a different cheap backup, which means that if they want to keep Kenny Pickett, they're going to have 1 year of a cheap backup in Tanner McKee. I don't know. They don't love him that much.
All right, fair point. I mean, I think that
maybe they think they can trade Pickett and flip him that way, but still.
Yeah, I think the way they're looking at it is if you have to win a game next year, you have a better chance of doing it with Kenny Pickett or Tanner McKee. By the way, that answer might not be obvious. Like that answer might not certainly be Kenny Pickett, even though Kenny Pickett was a first-round pick. But I think from their perspective, it's a chance to collect a guy that they probably had a decent draft grade on coming out of Pitt, and they'll see what they had on him. But they did trade. I mean, they traded meaningful pick, right, or a meaningful pick swap to get Pickett. So it's not like Pickett is a lottery ticket for them.
Lottery ticket.
There you go.
All right. Last thing from Howie Roseman, I think, is his sort of state of the cornerback position, which was another good question by you, Zach. And I think this is along the lines of we got a long way before week 1 happens, but in conjunction with the L'Jarius Sneed trade, which is also part of the Kenny Pickett conversation, L'Jarius Sneed gets traded for a third, and wasn't it some other pick swap as part of it or something? And obviously the new contract. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised that the Eagles didn't want to pay that, especially if you didn't make the Kenny Pickett trade, right? Like if it was a third on the table. That strikes me as the kind of thing that they might have been interested in. Maybe that means that they are in the market for a different veteran cornerback that they can trade for, who maybe has more upside or is a little bit younger. Maybe it means that they think they've got enough at the position, or they want to see how the draft plays out. What did Howie say about like the guys who are here and their expectations moving forward?
And then we'll get into the Snead talk after that.
Sure.
So what he said about corner is like Slay is someone who, they still think's the top cornerback. They looked at the way he played last year against number 1 corners, and they really liked him, right? or they thought he still played at a high level. Like they're still expecting Slay to be their number one corner. The Eagles aren't beating around the bush about James Bradberry. Like they are honest. They're not going to stand up there and try to give a spin about Bradberry's year. Bradberry did not play. Yeah, but they say like Bradberry did not play the way that they expected him to play when they gave him
his
contract.
expectations or our expectations.
Yes, exactly. And that when they signed Bradberry to that contract, they thought they'd have him for 3 years. Like they said they had.
He literally said, we're not shying away from the fact that he didn't have the year that he wanted or we wanted.
Yeah. But as we discussed on this show, like Bradberry has that contract. They're paying Bradberry, right? There's no financial relief right now to release Bradberry, right? So I think that they'll see what Bradberry has this spring and kind of make a decision. They can do something after June 1st if they want, but that's kind of where they stand there. Keely Ringo, like Howie's won't say this is their 3rd round pick this year, but they traded their 3rd round pick this year for him. They played him late last year. I think they saw some things that they liked. Eli Ricks is someone that they'll still hope to develop. Isaiah Rodgers, like they consider Isaiah Rodgers in this mix. Now he has to be reinstated, but they're looking forward to seeing him. Like that's something that is certainly the case. Tyler Hall, who they signed, they liked him when he was on Vegas's practice squad. Like they were interested in signing him then, but really, and this is the big reminder from Howie Roseman. He said, quote, again, it's March 25th. We'll see where it ends up here as we go through the process. And I said the first week of free agency, I did not think the move at corner was on the open market this year. I thought that if they really wanted to make a material change at corner, it would be like in the draft or via trade. And I thought they would trade for someone. I still think that's on the table. I think you've presented really good names when you talked about AJ Terrell, maybe JC Horn gets moved. The name that I'll keep mentioning is Patrick Surtain. Now, Denver hasn't given any indication that they're going to trade him, but Sean Payton said today that that don't rule the Broncos out basically as a trade-up candidate for a quarterback. And if the Broncos do that, then unless they're trading all their future firsts again, right, which they've already done for Russell Wilson, then they're going to have to get another first somehow. And I think the Eagles would give up number 22 right now for Patrick Surtain, right? So I would kind of, I'm not like reporting this.
I'm curious because of the market. The market for veterans has been so deflated. Would you need to give up a first? Could you give up 2 seconds?
I mean, he's like 23 years old. He might be the best corner in the league. But yeah, good point. I mean, if it's 2 seconds, yeah. But look, I said I was going to give up the 22nd pick of the draft for Brian Burns, and it wouldn't have cost that. So,
joke's on you.
Yeah, you don't want me making the trades, right? I'm the one who gave up a 2nd round pick for Zion Williamson in my fantasy league. I'm already knocked out, right? So that didn't do me any good.
Well, you're knocked out.
Yeah, I lost in the opening round of the playoffs.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh no, Zach! Oh no!
Yeah. But
and
you know
they
what?
didn't even say the name of our podcast when they talked about the whole back and forth.
Yeah, shout out to Rights to Ricky. And Levin made a good trade because he got Zion for a 2nd, and I thought I'd make a run, and I did not make a run.
Was it close at least?
Yeah, it was 5-3. It was 5-3. I couldn't. My problem was Drew Holiday didn't play any games last week, and he was like questionable every night. And I could have cut him early in the week, and I didn't do that. Anyways, it's kind of like when the Brewers traded for CC Sabathia, then they got knocked out right away, right? Then CC
but at least they had fun.
Well, Zion was fun to follow for these 3 weeks, but I'll always have these 3 weeks of Zion, right? Yeah.
Let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what's happening in your life 9 months from now.
You have to be a real NBA junkie to understand that joke. So anyways, that's kind of where they stand at cornerback. I think this is the position where like they need to make, or there's still room to be made here. Like in terms of a material change where you could say their starter week 1 or like their contributor week 1 might not be on the roster. I don't think James Bradberry's spot on the team is secure. I think this is a wait and see with Bradberry.
That's where I think there is a line between telling the truth and not necessarily telling the truth, because he's talking about James Bradberry has been through adversity before in his career. He has had bounce back years So like that is still on the table. And, we sent a 3rd-round pick for Keely Ringo. We liked what we saw from him this year. I don't know that I believe that they're willing to believe that Bradbury can be a starter for them. I still think it's more likely than not that he is not even here by training camp, but we will see. We'll see if they're not able to make a trade and if the draft doesn't work out that way. I mean, they do have they have better like middle depth at the position and like better shots than they have had in the past, especially if Isaiah Rodgers gets reinstated. Then you've got Ringo and Ricks and Rodgers, and even like the 20% chance that Bradbury gets back to a respectable level. Like that is better, 2 through 5 than they have had in recent years.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Because like I don't think that they need to use a 2nd or 3rd round pick on a corner if it's not the top of their board. I don't think that they need to force it.
Agreed.
All right. Before we move on, Zach, let's talk again about our friends at Mortgage CS. Mortgage CS offers refinancing options, including rate and term refinances for a rate or payment reduction, or cash out refinances to tap into home equity, making it a smart choice for those with high interest debt or funding home projects or education. Mortgage CS stands for Mortgage Concierge Service, white glove service from the good folks at Mortgage CS. They are going to take you through every step of the process and make things easier for you to understand, and easier for you to handle. They will do so much for you throughout the process. Mortgage CS is an independent mortgage broker based right here, just up that way in Philadelphia. Gives the full control of the lenders they work with, and they're available 24/7. Mortgage CS is licensed coast to coast in California, Colorado, DC, Delaware, right here in Florida, Massachusetts, Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Virginia, and Washington. But don't forget to spread the word to friends and family in the area. They are here to educate and empower their clients, and they're here to help their clients obtain ultra competitive rates. And they're giving you that Mortgage CS exceptional customer service, 24/7 availability from the 2 owners, Alec and Ben, and they help you win in a competitive market by calling the listing agents, reviewing offers, and highlighting your positive credentials and their stellar reputation. When you hear the word mortgage, think of Mortgage CS, think of Ben and Alec. Save Ben's telephone number, 267-391-7425 to your phone. Email ben@mortgagecs.com. Call or text Ben any time of day or night. Talk Philly sports. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to get started. The advertisement is not a commitment to lend or extend credit. Mortgage CS is an equal housing opportunity mortgage broker. All loans are subject to credit approval. Certain restrictions apply. Company NMLS ID 1464766. Visit mortgagecs.com for more information.
Now, without getting into too many details, I've had some bad experiences outside the Phillies ballpark trying to get tickets to go into games where I've been.
I'd love to unpack why you are not willing to talk about this. But.
I've been duped, if you will, by trying to find a good deal, and it wasn't the right way to go. But you know what I'm going to do in the future, and I could do it this weekend for the Phillies opening weekend, is just go to Game Time. Because did you know Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. That is music to my ears because I can sit outside the ballpark and just kind of wait for that price to fit what I'm looking for. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. They also have so many great features, including last-minute deals, which you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, comedy, concerts, and theater. They have flash deals with even more exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game and event. They have zone deals, which has even more when you choose a section, and it lets Game Time choose the seats. You can save even more that way. There's all-in pricing, which I like, because you toggle the feature that shows the total up front. That way you don't think you're getting this great deal, and then you go and you see all these fees. I like how transparent Game Time is about that. I've talked about the seat views in the past where you get this panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And they have the lowest price guarantee, which Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference if you find that better price. take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time for a limited time. All users can get $20 off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Game Time app with code FIRSTPITCH. Terms apply. That's FIRSTPITCH for $20 off from March 25th to April 14th only. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Zach, would you have done the L'Jarius Sneed deal if you were the Eagles?
If my evaluation of Snead as a player was that he was a top corner, yes, I would. I think that price in terms of contract is reasonable. I think the price I think you're giving up a third round pick. Now the Eagles they don't have a third round pick to give up, right? They probably have to give up.
They did. Yeah.
They did. But it wasn't the same. No, because I think the Chiefs were looking early. Actually, no, I'm sorry. This is next year's third round pick. So they do have a third round pick to give up.
That's right. It wasn't it was a
because I think the Chiefs were looking for a better third round pick than what the comp pick would have been had they not tagged him. But also, it really depends on if you think Snead's that player. If you think Snead was kind of like propped up in that defense, I don't have a strong opinion on it. I think the valuation's good, but it would really come down to the evaluation. I would rather like Patrick Surtain, but I don't know if Surtain's available.
It's all about the cost.
It's hard to say. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Anything else from Howie Roseman you'd like to touch on?
It was good speaking with him. We'll have more kind of sprinkled in over the next few days, but I think from a big picture perspective, those were the big ones here.
Okay.
Oh, well, we should say too, and this is an opinion that I have. Howie was asked about like the leadership void with Fletcher Cox and with Jason Kelce.
This is a big soapbox one for you, and I totally agree with your take here.
Yeah, and so he kind of talked about the guys who can step up as leaders. But I want to make one thing clear. I keep hearing how are the Eagles going to replace these guys as leaders, and they're going to miss them as players, but they're really going to miss the leadership. They're going to miss them as players much more, in my opinion.
Yeah, not even close.
Jason Kelce is an all-pro center who controls the line of scrimmage. You're not going to get that from day one, at least with Cam Jurgens. Fletcher Cox was their most consistent defensive player last year. He was a consistent player here for a decade plus. They're going to miss that. I keep hearing they're going to miss.
Yeah, they had them both as leaders last year. The team totally
exactly.
stank at the end of the season. Yeah. So what did it matter?
Yeah, they're going to miss these guys as football players far more than they're going to miss these guys as leaders. That's not to take anything away from them as leaders. It's just that I always say this. Leadership is apparent on good teams, right? Like if you're when you have a good team, you can always point to the leadership. What the Eagles need is a lot of good players, and they're really going to miss that at center and at defensive tackle.
I totally agree. I think that's a good. They're absolutely going to miss them more as elite players than they are as leaders. Although Howie did go through, Devin White's been a captain, Saquon Barkley's been a captain. Some of these guys they're bringing in have some of those capabilities. I think we touched on everything else from around the league. What did you make of the rule changes, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not being an Eagles John Ferrari stan here, but I would much rather see a 4th and 20.
Got voted down again.
Yeah, got voted down again. It's a fun play. I would love that. That would add more excitement to the game. I heard Andy Reid when he was talking about kickoffs, basically saying that they have 2,000 plays that aren't good for fans, aren't good for players, aren't good for coaches, right? In kickoffs right now. So add some excitement back to the kickoffs. That's kind of how I view that 4th and 20 proposal. I would like to see that. I don't the NFL more than any other league seems to be most resistant to change sometimes when it comes to rules.
Ooh, I don't agree with that. They change the rules every offseason.
Okay.
I mean, baseball changed the rules once in 50 years.
Yeah, so that's all right. Fair enough. So I think they don't for instance, we talk about the chains and things like that. They're still antiquated things that are kind of baked in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually think they have a fetish for over litigating the game and changing things and making that part of the entertainment product. Is there's always a new thing to complain about.
Is that how you see the tackle change?
I think the hip track tackle thing, first of all, it's going to be a total disaster to litigate and officiate in game. maybe I'm going too far here. I also think it's pretty gross. Like the NFLPA is against this, right? Like vehemently against this. And I think scale wise, obviously it's different, but I think there is a bit of a connective thread between who is in your hotel room right now. Are we into mistress talk?
No, it's the housekeeping attendant or the cleaning person.
I'm coming a little bit late at 5 o'clock.
You're telling me, yeah.
Looking askance. I think if you would like me to move on, I think there's a connective thread. This is not funny, between the like Republican urge to litigate women's health and tell you how we think that you should have agency over your own body. No, we're going to be the ones who are in charge of that. And it's like a constant reminder of who is in charge and putting you in your place. I think there is a functionality of that here from ownership perspective. Like, we're in charge. It doesn't matter if you think that this is best for you or your bodies. Like, we're going to tell you what's best. And it's just another way of letting you know that we're the ones who are in charge.
I mean, yeah, I think that's a little bit of a leap here. I don't see the.
I think gremlins are going to gremlin.
I think this is a situation where, that they want to kind of point to things, whether it's real or whether it's artificial, of how they're trying to make the game safer. And I mean, you could argue whether this makes the game safer, but this is them saying we focus on player safety, and so we're going to do this. Whereas, like, the reality is, they play a collision sport, and as long as there's tackling, like, you're wearing pads and helmets for a reason, and there's going to be injuries here. But yeah, I don't. I don't see a similarity.
You don't want to be part of this conversation, as I believe.
I mean, I don't think when they're in that meeting there, they are thinking about women's reproductive rights. I don't think. I think that is like.
Well, I'm not saying they're thinking. That's not what I said. I'm just saying, like, oh, we know best. We want to let you know. That,
I actually don't think they want that. I don't think they know best. I don't think they think they know best here. I just think they want to point to something that they did. I think they just want to say, look, we care about player safety, right? Because we're changing this tackle. Like, I think they're just looking for things to point to. It's like someone who like runs the first base. I'll tell you what it's like. It's like the valet parker who you give them the keys and they sprint to the car, right? Because they want you to see that, like, they're working to do something here. I think that's what this is.
Okay. I'm not going to linger here. I'll allow us to move on.
Yeah. Because by the way, the owners meeting is where we had some of one of our most contentious shows in the past.
I don't even remember this.
Oh, ooh. I remember vividly. I
sort of remember the general idea of it from 2 years ago.
I remember calling my wife the next morning. Yeah, being like, I felt really uncomfortable about last night's show. We were sitting in the West Palm Beach airport at like 6 a.m. being like, Emily, like, I think Birds with Friends is in trouble right now. I was saying that I think Bo accused me of, like, condoning Deshaun Watson's behavior because I simply said that the Eagles are, like, focused on trying to find a good quarterback, and they're not making a moral stand when it comes to that they're separating the art from the artist. I think that was my position.
David remembers. He says the Deshaun Watson show. I don't even remember the whole back and forth.
Yeah.
But
I remember. Yeah, I slept very uncomfortably that night.
Trouble.
Yeah, I slept uncomfortably that night because of that, and because I was in a hotel room that did not change its air filters for about that. I don't think that hotel.
I don't think they've ever changed them.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
How do you like this hotel, Zach?
I mean, besides the fact that they just knocked on my door at 5 o'clock. By the way, we got the sheet of paper here when we signed in that said that said you will receive a tidy refresh every day, which includes garbage removal and towel replacement. Okay, so like that's the extent of it. They empty your trash and
They made my
give you new
bed.
towels.
Did they not make
Oh,
your bed?
really? No,
No, that's what they were there for.
That's what they're here for. 506. Look, I mean,
I think the smell is fine. I feel like it passes the smell test. Oh, you don't. Wow.
Yeah.
You think it smells bad, or you think it lacks a distinct good?
Well,
smell?
it definitely lacks a distinct good smell, but
I don't think it smells bad.
It's kind of smell. I was gonna text you last night. Does your room smell like chlorine? Yeah.
Smell snob.
Look, it's a fine. Look, I'll put it this way. I've stayed in much worse. I'm not complaining.
Oh, no doubt.
I don't want. Yeah. I mean, one thing
the
that
water pressure, not my favorite. I could use a little bit more from the water pressure.
Okay. Yeah. And it took about like 45 seconds for hot water to come out. Did that happen for you as well?
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay, we'll get to that. Yeah. But no, I've said this. I said this to you off camera, and I'll say it on. Like, I don't think any I don't think any fan like wants to hear from reporters complaining about their
it's just a check-in.
Yeah.
People care about your proclivities.
Yeah, look, this is I wouldn't bring the family here. I like this isn't where I would like I wouldn't take Emily. No, I wouldn't take Emily on like a vacation to here, but it's fine. It's for.
I don't think I've ever stayed somewhere where they go steamer over iron.
I did see that. Yeah, I did see that. Okay.
We have to figure out how to use the steamer.
Yeah. By the way, Randy says housekeeping going to knock at 5 a.m. Look, I was up at 5 a.m. So the housekeeping could knock at 5 a.m. I was ready to rock and roll at 5 a.m.
All right, let's get to that because Zach saved my life this morning.
I was worried for your life. I didn't save your life. I was worried for
credit. Your life. For being a true hero. I texted him last night. What's our call time in the morning? Coach's breakfast is 7:45. Zach's got the rental car, so he says let's leave at 6:45. I said great, no problem. I was just hanging out in the room last night watching college basketball. Had dinner with myself. Lovely. Nothing going on. And then I get a room phone call this morning that wakes me up. And I look at my clock. It's 7:15. What have I done? Somehow my alarm was on silent, and I slept right through the whole thing. I was so unworried about getting up at 6:15. It was just completely off my radar. And then here's concierge. Your friend here was checking on you. I knew exactly what had happened. I ran into the shower. I think I was downstairs within 10 minutes, but I felt terrible. I totally screwed you over. That's never happened to me before.
It's okay. I'll say from my perspective, it went from like slightly annoyed to like slightly worried. Because
you tried to call me.
I texted like 4 times and I called twice and you weren't picking up.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh goodness, like I hope everything's okay. Do I have to contact Rachel? Like, do I have to?
You said you were minutes away from texting Zach and Marissa to ask for Rachel's number.
Or she or Marissa, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Sheil.
so I was I didn't quite know what to do there. And there was like a steady stream of our colleagues from a different outlet who who are also staying in the hotel, and like, they were getting Ubers or Lyfts, and I was like, oh, I can give you a ride. And like they're hanging out with me for like 5 minutes.
Oh, there were people waiting for a ride with you who then left?
Oh yeah. Like,
that's very funny.
And I was like, sorry, I'm waiting on Bo. And then they're like, and then one person was like, well, when Bo wakes his ass up, he can get an Uber.
Yeah.
And then,
but here's the other thing.
I was like, actually, Bo has my credentials.
Yes. So not only did I hold you up, but you couldn't even leave without me because I went yesterday to try to do my part as a good teammate and got your credential for you before you arrived. No. But that meant that you were held hostage.
Yeah. Look, we got there on time. No harm, no foul.
We did get there on time. We didn't miss anything.
You did a good job getting changed quickly. I was just happy everything was okay because like I'm thinking like, oh my God, am I gonna have to call Rachel? I didn't know what happened. Like I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. Like and I wanted to see if you.
If I had died, would you have done the show today still?
Well, what kind of question is that? I would be in mourning. I'd be really like, I mean, I don't want to talk about this. That's a horrible leap to take. Yeah, I just didn't know what was
your mind must have gone there. Am I going to have to miss Howie for this?
I figured your phone died was my guess. And that's why, but I had to go to the front desk, like you said, and they said, his room number. I was like, I don't know his room number. I said, but this is, I literally said this. I've been sitting right here in front of you for the last 25 minutes at this point, or last 20 minutes. I was like, I didn't say this whole thing out, but I'm thinking like, I wasn't sitting here for 20 minutes with this idea of like, defrauding someone in your hotel by finding out there, by having you call them. Like I'm clearly waiting for somebody.
Let me ask you this, because it's clear that my short-term or middle-term memory is not very good. Am I right that this has not happened before?
Oh yeah, for sure. No,
well, certainly not to this level. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, it happens with me too sometimes where like, I'm 6 minutes late or something like that. And I'm usually like a texter, like, hey, I'm coming down now. Like, or I need an extra 5 that. So I figured it was that. But then when it got to 7, I was like, oh shoot. And then when it got to like 7:05, I was like, oh, but yeah, look, this is fine. This is fine.
But it's a good tip now for people if they do want to defraud somebody. Put in the time on the front end, wait like a half an hour, looking aggrieved in the lobby, and then go to the front desk.
Yeah. Seriously, playing the long game there. No, but I was annoyed at first, but
rightfully so.
It worked out fine, and it was the AFC today. Like if it was tomorrow,
yes,
I would be really fired up. Yeah,
absolutely, and fairly so.
Yeah, if I'm late to Nick because I'm like, Nick, this guy didn't get out of bed today. Yeah,
that would be hard. That would be hard to live down. But we did get there on time. So
I would probably need
all the more reason to have an early call time. So you build in some equity.
I probably need a second sentence. I had the thing where I woke up at 5, right? My alarm was set for 5:45, and then I'm like, it's going to take me 8 to 10 minutes to fall back to sleep. Do I really need those extra 35 minutes? And so then I was like, you know what? I'm up. My REM's finished. So I'm just gonna get up, showered, researched some stuff, read some stuff, and was ready for the day.
Okay. All right, Zach. That is pretty much it for this episode. Now let's update what we're gonna do tomorrow. So tomorrow morning, after tonight's extravaganza with the owners and the head honchos in the NFL, the bacchanal that is going to happen at the Ritz-Carlton and the JW. We will hear from Nick Sirianni early in the morning. Now, some discussion that it's not fair that AFC coaches go first and NFC coaches go second every single year, putting the head coaches and media members in the NFC in the very difficult position of having to be there at 7:45 in the morning after the bacchanal. You know what? Tough. That's why this job is so hard, right, Zach? Not the case. We're going to hear from Nick Sirianni in the morning. We're going to hear from Jeffrey Lurie tomorrow afternoon, and then our plan right now is one show at 5 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, in which we will talk about everything that we've heard from Sirianni and Jeffrey Lurie. The only time of year that Jeffrey Lurie speaks, so that will be an important thing to unpack. Until then, how are you feeling, Zach? Excited? This is your favorite place.
Yeah, feeling excited. On that note, I have no sympathy for like the sports reporters who will tweet out, I don't know how people function at this hour, right? It's like 7:45 in the morning. Like this is a totally
normal time,
reasonable time. Now you're obviously not, out that late often on a Monday night or whatever. But come on, like this is, I have no sympathy for people who are like, oh God, I can't function here.
We get to do this job. We don't have to do this job.
That's what I say every day. Yep.
Okay. Anything else to get off your chest? besides that handsome shirt?
No, we got a full show tomorrow, and then I got good shows coming Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with Rich Hoffman. So excited for those. So there's gonna be a lot to still unpack from Howie, from Nick, from Jeffrey Lurie, and you can find more coverage on allphly.com. Also, shout out, by the way, real quick, big news for PHLY.
Yes,
the Gargano show.
Cuz is back.
Yep, starting on Thursday at 9 a.m. So make sure you tune in.
Yeah, excited about that. Got the whole squad ready to go. Very excited to watch that on Thursday and every day after that. So for Zach and Julia behind the scenes and everybody who was here live commenting away, we thank you for listening and watching. Make sure to subscribe and hit the like button, all that good stuff. We will talk to you tomorrow at 5. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.